As a parent, when something as terrible as the massacre in Paris happens, how should you respond? Your first thought might be to try and shield your children from such horrific news, but is that the best approach? Here with some advice on how to talk to your child at every age about the Paris terror attack is Dr. Aliza Pressman, a developmental psychologist, co-director of the Mount Sinai Parenting Center and co-founder of Seedlings Group. Dr. Pressman, great to see you. Thanks for being with us. Is it ever a good idea to not address something like this with your child, especially if you perhaps have a child who's already nervous and fearful to begin with?
It depends on the child's age. It's very appropriate to shield your child if they're under the age of 5. So 5 and under, it's really difficult to differentiate between fears and real things that are going on. It's incredibly difficult to explain this and not cause anxiety. So it doesn't matter what the level of anxiety is that your child has.
And let's say that young child hears something from a friend or sees something on the news. What do you do then?
So if a young child, so under the age of 5, if they hear something, first ask them what they've heard. And you would do this with older children too, to find out kind of where they're at. And then reassure them that they're safe and loved and that something very sad happened and scary somewhere very far away. You can even show them, because they're such concrete thinkers, just show them a map and kind of try to explain how very far it is, and let them know that they're very safe. It was very sad, and that, you know, the people around us are protecting us and protecting the people in France, and leave it at that.
So reassure them and leave it. Don't give them more information than they need. Now, what about once you get into elementary school children? What should you do then?
So elementary school children, it's important not to shield them, because they are going to be out and about. People are going to be talking about it. So between the ages of 6 and 11, you really need to address it, even if they haven't brought it up, just to find out what they've heard. Again, you want to keep things simple. They don't need to know tremendous detail. They don't need to know how terrifying it was, but they do need to know that there were attacks in Paris, that people were killed and hurt, and that the perpetrators are caught. You can kind of bend on that rule a little bit, that we're very safe here, that people are taking tremendous measures to make sure everyone's safe.
How important, though, is it to, because we may be scared and fearful ourselves, so how important is it to not show that fear to our elementary school age child?
It's important not to show that fear to any child, because they're looking to you for cues. Should they be scared? Should they be calm? In this case, you really don't want their everyday life to change in any way. You want them to know that this was sad, this was scary, but we're safe and protected, and we're going to push forward with life.
And keep the routines and all of that in place. Now, what about sort of the preteen? Because they have access to all kinds of information. So how do you discuss it with a preteen?
When you're talking about this with preteens and even teenagers, but certainly preteens, still keep the news off. Certainly keep media off for anybody younger than teenagers.
So don't keep CNN on 24 hours a day the way I do.
No. You really want to control what they see, and if you let CNN control what they see, they'll see images over and over again. It starts to cause anxiety in adults, let alone children. So control the news, but talk to them very honestly about, and even give them articles. You can find articles that are beautifully written. They aren't as scary because they don't include images, and they might have a more appropriate approach to discussing it.
Right, it's not as sensationalist. Now, talking about the teenager, though, this gets tricky because the teenager probably knows more details about what happened and more quickly than you do. I mean, they're online, they're on top of everything. How do you talk to a teenager about it who's going to be who probably doesn't want to show you that they're scared, or probably doesn't want to show that they're vulnerable?
Depending on your teenager, it's a great opportunity to have conversations, political conversations about ethics and morals and values. It's a great opportunity to talk about violence in their own backyard and peaceful discussions, peaceful disagreements, how you can handle things. And let them know to turn the TV off, model that. Like, the news is not where they should, the television is not where they should get their news from, sorry to say, but that you can have real intellectual dialogues with them, show them articles, listen to the radio, to appropriate shows, and then kind of let them know how you feel so that they're more comfortable talking about it. And also don't have a sit down and confront them. How are you feeling? You really want to kind of be doing something else and mention it.
But it's so tricky with children because so often they can be hard to read, and we don't often know when they're really heavily impacted by something. So are there signs we should be looking out for?
Any change in everyday behavior and activity, sleep, food, friends, if they're isolating more, if they're clinging more, any unusual behavior is usually a sign that something's going on inside they haven't had a chance to talk about.
Now, another important aspect of all of this, at least for me as a parent, is how do you turn this into a teaching experience about the Muslim religion? Because for so many children, they may not know Muslims personally. And for them to see this in the news, I mean, this is a quarter of the world's population, 1.6 billion people are Muslim. And of course, the vast majority are peaceful people. So how do you talk to this about your children who want to know what makes somebody do something so horrible like that?
Well, as you said, you explained the vast majority of Muslims are practicing their religion peacefully, and you can talk about the history of every religion, and that this very small percentage are jihadists, fundamentalists, right. Not representing this whole religion. And it's incredibly important to make sure that they understand and you model for them that every human being should be treated equally, that the reason that there are problems like this is because of the anger and hurt and fears that can occur, and then what happens when people don't know how to resolve those feelings, those problems. And
don't let that
we have history.
Grow in yourself.
Absolutely.
Dr. Aliza Pressman, thank you so much for that really important advice.